tatta dhim tatakita dhim tadim tattam. Hello everyone, this is Padma Menon. Thank you so much for stopping by. It's an honor to welcome you to my channel where I share information about practices and philosophy from ancient goddess traditions from my culture, which is India. Today I am really glad and honored to share with you the practice of the second chakra, which is called the sacral chakra very popularly, but in Sanskrit it's called Svadhisthana. In the goddess tradition, the importance is to drop down into the chakras. So it is very different to how we understand it today, which is about going up the chakras and outside of the body and transcending. Now, I have spoken about this in another video, so I will have a link to that in the detail section. So check it out if you want a bit of a background. In another video, I also spoke about the lower chakra, the Muladhara, and again go to the link to find out more. So the Muladhara, the root chakra, is in dance in this goddess tradition, is about connecting to the earth and rhythm. The second chakra, Svadhisthana, is about the great waters of consciousness, the great dark waters, the ocean of sensation. The Sanskrit word swa adhisthana. So swa means I or the self, but this is not the self that we normally think of, the self that has a name and is got particular roles. In other words, the self that is defined by the mind, the upper parts of our body. This is the self that is underneath all of that, the most expansive self, the self that can actually embrace much more of our consciousness than the self we have, which is filtered through the mind. And that is sensation. And in dance, the practice here is about flow. So it's about flow. In fact, it is flow that makes a movement into dance. And flow in this practice is not something we do because of a music that is external to us, but it is coming from how our consciousness connects to or matches the consciousness around us in the moment. In the moment. So it's like the great waters in our hips and finding that expansive, spacious, indulgent, luxurious flow. Now, as I'm doing this, you can probably sense something else about this chakra, and that is pleasure. So pleasure, sensuality is also the second chakra, Svadhisthana. Sensation, pleasure, sensuality. So I know that as women, for many of you, this is challenging, this idea of pleasure and sensuality, because women's bodies for thousands of years has been about pleasing somebody else. The pleasure of our body, the beauty of your body has been always to please somebody else. And so it's almost like we reject it. We are wary of it. It's a difficult thing sometimes. But this invitation in Svadhisthana is to touch, to taste, to move the intrinsic ability of our body to experience and express pleasure, because that is also the intrinsic ability of nature and of consciousness. Pleasure is not something that is just within us. It is actually what drenches consciousness and nature. And in goddess traditions, it is the soil of the practice. Whatever you do in a goddess tradition, doesn't matter if it's ferocity, if it's being a warrior, whatever it is really grown in the soil of pleasure and beauty. And that is why dance, of course, is such an important practice, because dance is the practice of beauty and pleasure and flow. So I invite you to join me, and when you do this, my invitation to you is to think about this practice as an offering to yourself. It is not an offering to please anybody else, but it is an offering to the goddess, your consciousness, your own divinity. It is an offering of pleasure and beauty to your own self, to the most expansive self. And you're getting in touch with the pleasure, sensuality, flow that is the very basis of your most expansive self. So let's do this practice together. To start, as always, we drop into this lower body. And now there is a really fun pot practice which I have shared with you, and I'll put a link to that. So check that out if you really want to practice that grounding in your lower body. But just here, to be short, this is like a pot, your lower body. You drop into that pot. We are only concerned about this part of the body, the lower body. It's called the chari. And so here we are in the pot, weight in our feet, hips a little bit backward as if you are pushed back a little bit as if you're going to sit. So there's a bit of weight in the hips, more weight towards the heels. The chin is retreated, chest is nice and beautifully open, arms are soft, and the pot is filled with water. So this is the rounded sides of the pot, and here is full of water. This is the ocean between our hips, and the water is moving. So freeing the hips. This movement of free hips, again, a really core movement in goddess traditions, not just in India, but in many other cultures. So the hips, there's no rush, spacious, and you can use your fingers if it helps you, just like that rippling, you know, the gentleness, the waves of the sea, the ocean. It's spacious. Breathe and drop in, completely drop your consciousness into this pot. It's like you don't have a body outside of the pot. This whole body is just in the pot. Da-da-dum-dum. You can hum or sing along or whatever is coming to you. That's a great way of bringing the mind into the pot. Just humming. Dum, da, dum, da, 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 dum, da, 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 dun, da, 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 dun, da, 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 dun. And now, when you really feel like you're really one with that movement, that beautiful, languid, sensuous, pleasurable movement of those waters, then there's another beautiful movement to add. And this movement is inspired by this beautiful movement of the big fan-like ears of elephants. I grew up in a place where there were lots of elephants, and even before I knew anything about this particular practice, I used to spend hours watching these elephants just standing there and resting, or just so beautifully pleasurable, fanning their large ears. And so I absolutely understand how this is such a great movement from nature to match our own movement of pleasure and sensation. So how do we do this? So you can see how I've been using my hands. If you think of this as the ears of the elephant, the opening those ears and closing those ears, and then allow the whole body to respond. Ra. Open out the body, opening out the body, and da. Dum, da, da, dum, da, da, da. This is, if you can find a video on YouTube to watch elephants just resting and standing, you will just see how this movement is so inspired by that indulgent, gracious, luxurious, languid, restful moments of pleasure that nature provides us. You know, we don't have to make things up. All we need to do is, everything is there already, everything. All we need to do is to just match. And you can then start this way, change sides. Let the breath follow. There's no hurry. There's no hurry. Dum, da, dun, da, 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 dun, da, 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 dum, da, 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 dun. And then when you're ready, you can go back to this, transferring the weight and the waters. And when you've done this a few times, see what movement is coming to you now from this practice. And I invite you to start from the lower body. So I'm not suggesting here, I'm just doing what's coming to me. So see what movement comes to you, but start with that. Think of those waters. Think that your lower body is this ocean. Da, 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 da. Like I said, drop the whole consciousness into that chakra there, the pot of your lower body. Ram, dum, da, 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 dun, da, 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 dun, da. And then if it comes to you, you can add some arms, as long as the arms don't take over. As long as the arms are following the lower body. Da, 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 dum, da, dun, da, 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 dum, da, da. And then when you've allowed those movements to emerge, returning to here and gently bringing that to a close. So this practice of pleasure is central to most goddess traditions, wherever you look at in the world, because goddess tradition was never about coercion, brutality, control, discipline, all of those things that a lot of the time you associate with many spiritual practices. Here the practice is that whatever you approach through pleasure and beauty. And that is the greatest way of inviting the mind to drop into that expansiveness, because that's the only way that the mind actually comes along to the party, is when we offer the mind beauty and pleasure, because like everything else in nature, mind is also part of nature. And that's also what the mind loves, and that's what is much more powerful than the capacity of the mind for control, is its love of pleasure and beauty. And we have problematized this so much in our times, and that is a great loss, because it offers us a beautiful gateway into becoming, experiencing the most expansive consciousness, which connects us, to both within and to nature and the goddess and divinity everywhere, in us and outside of us. So I do hope you enjoy this practice, and if you do, let me know what you thought about it, any reflections that you have, and I look forward to your company on this channel again.